According to my computer. There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's EverHome broadcast. This is a digital marketing trends show. My name is Lee Honish, and I am a digital marketing specialist. As always, I'm joined by David Bartels, broker owner of EverHome. How are you today, David?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Outstanding. Back in the studio, back in lovely San Diego after my trips abroad. After watching perhaps one of the most bizarre lopsided Super Bowls in modern history, I'm doing really well. Were you surprised by the Super Bowl?
I was a little bit. I was rooting for the old guy, because I'm being an old guy myself, and but it's hard not to be a big fan of the kid, Mahomes.
Yeah, Mahomes is
that one play where he was literally horizontal in the air and still threw a football with accuracy and hit the guy in the face mask. With that philosophy and ties for I don't know how I don't get it. The guy is a magician. It's true, but nothing beats a experience of 10 Super Bowls and a championship legacy, I guess. So there is something to say about age before beauty.
Yeah. Well, I can say as a Charger fan, I'm not sad. That's just me hating on Mahomes, but I can see greatness.
You gotta love the kid.
I do. I have a great love for him, actually.
He's really good for football.
This was the first time in a couple of years I got to go back to Vegas. So it was a long-standing thing for me to go to Vegas and watch the Super Bowl. I do it year in and year out. And, that's kind of what we're leading into today as our topic. I was surprised on two levels. One, I had already seen the pandemic version of Las Vegas and its lack of people. It's really shocking to see it up close and to Las Vegas is an infrastructure. What I was really, I had a chance. I don't know if I talked to you on this day. I decided that I was going to walk from downtown all the way back up the strip and sort of take a look at everything. It's under a massive level of construction. They're taking advantage of the opportunity to, with the lack of people, to work and do construction. And Hilton is getting ready to open Resort World this summer. Horrible idea. But the Resort World property, the old Frontier property, is done. The Fontainebleau still sits there, half built, still in whatever kind of receivership it is. And then from that point to the edge of downtown, the city has decided to gut the streets, tear down the old buildings. And here is a big tip, David. I'm going to give you a tip and everybody a tip. There is a company called OYO, O-Y-O, that has bought up every cheap motel, every strip mall, every hotel they can get their hands on in Las Vegas and slap their logo on it. And they're redeveloping. They're jumping into the Vegas game while it's sort of on its back leg. So I found that interesting. But yes, definitely the tourism thing is hurting. And because I have friends in the city, a lot of people have left Las Vegas. Like a lot of the workforce has left because they don't have a job. And it's this weird, I don't know how to really describe it. It's a city that obviously has a lot of commerce. They did some business this weekend, but the crowds were definitely down. I wonder what's going to happen when things go back to normal, when they don't have a workforce, and what the drive to Vegas is going to look like for employment later on.
You're talking about resident. We're talking about the
residents are gone. The residents are gone as well.
But they'll come back. They're going to go where the jobs are, right?
Right.
Vegas isn't known for its remote jobs. You can't deal cards and make drinks remotely. I know there's a lot of other jobs than that in Vegas. So they'll come back for all the reasons they went there in the first place.
Yeah.
So
true.
according to the data that I see in California, Vegas and Nevada in general is one of the top 5 places that Californians are still leaving for because of the business friendly nature of it and because of the affordability. I mean, when you think about selling a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 house or more, and taking $200,000-$300,000 in equity or more, and going, and you can buy cash or mostly cash for a lot more house and not have to live with some of the taxes and other, regulatory constraints that you face as a business and as well as an individual. So thanks to the entertainment industry.
Yeah, definitely. With all of that said, hey, everybody, this show is brought to you by Everhome. Check them out at everhome.io. Follow both David and I on social media platforms. I'm at Lee Honish Marketing, and he is at David Bartels with an S. Check out Everhome. It is the way to list your home online for one low set fee. Check out the Everhome way. Discover the benefits risk-free. Again, that's everhome.io. That's Everhome for every home. This show is a digital marketing, digital real estate marketing trend show. That's a mouthful. We try to cover as much as we can for both consumers and people within the industry. Today, we have two stories coming at you. Both of them are kind of on the same topic and kind of where we started, David. The first one is what the real estate industry is going to look like in 2021. This is brought to us by Forbes online. And the number one thing they see right out of the gate, David, is record-setting prices. Homes aren't just selling, they're setting at a record pace. The COVID-fueled real estate boost caused an average of 42% of homes listing nationwide to sell in 2 weeks or less. One survey found that more than half of home buyers say the pandemic accelerated the home buying process, especially in competitive markets like San Diego. Okay, so let's start right there and apply it to what's going on for you in Southern California up there and for me down here. I can agree with this. There's nothing on the market in San Diego, even though I know this for a fact. In San Diego, the big deal was we normally see a higher influx of people wanting to live here, especially this time of year, as compared to people leaving. And we've been flat now just prior to the pandemic, but now definitely through the pandemic, we're seeing a period of not growth in San Diego, but properties are still moving at an unbelievable pace. So is the pace going to continue from your perspective?
In 2021, it's going to increase. I mean, we're going to have a bigger year in 2021 than we had in 2020, which was a big surprise to a lot of people. So yes, it's going to continue.
Okay. So they're talking about 2021 not being such a steady rush, but more of a just a consistent flow, creating this is where I disagree, right? They think that there's the new type of normal in 2021. 2021 was a bit slower. We've talked about it being faster. They think it's going to cool down a little bit towards winter next year. Yeah. You've talked about this. You think that this will continue to increase? Well,
I think that what we're going to, okay, so if you contrast 2020 to 2021, what we saw last year was not normal. The year started out briskly last year. So January, February were good, solid years relative to previous January, February. So there was a sign that it was going to be a great year last year. And then COVID came. And then it knocked everybody, off their feet, March, April. And then May, we started seeing it come back as people that home, what COVID did is it really made people realize how important home was and homestead was. And then the work from home whole thing made people look at their home work life a lot differently than they did. And all of a sudden, open spaces weren't really as important. We liked open living spaces. And, what I learned when you got two adults, two parents working at home and two college kids also trying to do their classes from home, that open living space like I have in my house doesn't really work, right? It's hard to find space for everybody to have quiet. And so all of us, and then also the other thing that happened was that people realized they don't have to live in San Francisco or LA or New York or Baltimore. And there's lots of, city centers, which is the housing, the financial and legal industries, around the world with people. And all of a sudden they're working remotely. And so now they've got flexibility in where they can live. And so that's why people started living. They started living because they were able to find they either could be closer to friends and family again, or a lot of people bought second homes that they can retreat to. And a lot of people just really they just needed a different living space in order to accommodate what may or may not become a new normal on a long-term basis. And so we thought that we never really had the summer selling season. It wasn't until about July that the market really broke loose. And then when the market generally subsides in September, October, and then eases again further into November and December, we never saw that last year. And so we saw a big surge in activity when the summer selling season ended up starting at the end of the summer to the beginning of the fall. And it wasn't until mid-November that we really started to see that traditional pullback, but the market really stayed strong relative to previous Novembers and Decembers as we went into the new year. What you're going to see this year, instead of having that big surge that ended up more than making up for the spring and summer lull that we had, you're going to see a lot more consistent cycle. So what we're seeing now is we're starting to see that momentum growing January, February, which is what's typical. We're entering the spring selling season, and it's going to be, amazingly robust. And then we'll probably see a more traditional September, October, November, fourth quarter that we've seen in previous years. And whether or not that happens is going to be dependent primarily on one thing, in my opinion, and that is whether or not kids are back in school or not. So one of the reasons you had such a robust September, in the summer the reason you have a fall slowdown is that families are trying to transition back to school. They've got to get their kids back in the routine, and they don't really want to be changing schools and doing all that stuff. But if kids aren't going to school, then that simply extends the selling season further into the end of the year. So if kids are back in school, you'll see a more typical, fall. And if kids aren't back in school, it'll probably be busy until near Thanksgiving. That's just my humble opinion.
No, it's a good opinion, David. So the one that I have the most experience with as of lately, which is a change to remote workplaces, right? Change budgets, higher prices. This also falls under leaving cities. So it's about lowering your costs, and the remote workplace is a very real thing now. So people have the opportunity to sell and move out to different areas and change their overhead and their situation. So let's start right there, right? Because of the pandemic, the new normal, we have higher prices. I know this from Hawaii. I know this from San Diego as compared to, say, somewhere like Las Vegas. Las Vegas looks really appealing to me. Based on their prices. Their gas prices are cheaper. Their grocery costs are cheaper. San Diego, for where I live here outside of downtown, prices are higher, right? I live in a fairly upscale area, but it's also a tourist area. So my prices are a little bit higher. Hawaii, the price of food is ridiculous. The cost of gas is ridiculous. And then when you contrast to a place like Las Vegas, while admittedly, maybe weather-wise, it's not quite the same. It's definitely cheaper, and I can understand that. You can lower your overhead, and I can see what the higher prices look like here. From your perspective, do you see any change going into the deeper part of 2021?
No, I think prices are going to continue to rise. I mean, right now, the big thing, we have way more buyers. I know in our agency, we have way more buyers than we have sellers. Now having said that, that doesn't mean everything is selling. You can't put any price tag. I mean, the big disconnect that there are in selling is that all this robustness that we're seeing in this marketplace is making some sellers delusional. Okay, I say with love, right? They're putting these aspirational prices on their house. And so what I have observed and what I've been talking with my team about is that there are two kinds of inventory. One is the kind of inventory you referenced, earlier, and that is you got the inventory that sells within a week or two with multiple offers above asking price. Okay, that's one set of properties. And I think you quoted 43% of houses selling within 2 weeks. Okay.
Right.
The other category is the stuff that sits on the market and doesn't sell. And the only difference between those two buckets of inventory are that one is priced at or below market value and one is priced above market value. The stuff that's priced at or below market value is selling very quickly, and the stuff that's overpriced is sitting on the market not selling, and sellers are scratching their head not understanding how that could be happening to them, because they were absolutely certain that their house was going to sell with multiple offers. And what they don't understand, and buyers are struggling with this too, because there's a lot of buyers that don't want to be in bidding wars, and they don't want to pay more than list price, and they feel like if they're paying more than list price that they're overpaying, and that's not what that means. We're in a market right now where buyers, aka the market, okay, are setting the value. It's not set by comps. It's not set by what the seller wants or needs. It's the classic, what's the buyer willing to pay? What's a buyer willing to pay to be able to get that done? And that's what buyers, so just because you pay more than list price doesn't mean you're overpaying. And just because, and it doesn't mean if you pay less than list price that you got a good deal. Okay. So, one quick example of how this is, we just put a buyer in escrow last week. It was listed for $1,250,000. We got there and looked at the property the second day. There were 11 offers already. By the time, there were 11 offers. Now we got our deal in escrow, but we had to pay $1,330,000 to get it done and really put together a tight contingency offer in order to win the bidding. But we won the deal. There was a higher offer than ours, but it wasn't a better offer than ours. But at the end of the day, and when we started that process, the buyer was saying, I'm not paying over list price. He just wasn't willing to do it. And then I got the comps out and I said, listen, if you can buy this house anywhere under $1,350,000 and even up to $1,375,000, you're getting good value based on the comps. Right. And as a result, he ended up paying $80,000 more and got an under market value. Price has nothing to do with the value, nothing to do with the value. And what you pay relative to list price doesn't mean you got a good or bad deal. That was some number that a seller or a listing agent pulled out of the sky, put it on there. List price is only about marketing houses, and it has nothing to do with what the value is, and it has nothing to do with the price it will or should sell for.
Do you think this creates a dangerous dynamic with properties certainly going over appraised value because of the lack of availability? This has caused potential for difficulty in the past when properties start doing the overappraised value routine. What's your perspective on it?
Well, I'll tell you the competitiveness in the market. We're seeing two things that we haven't seen in a long time. Number one is no appraisal contingencies. So we're seeing a lot of offers with no appraisal contingencies because even sellers, come out of the ether and say, I wonder if it's going to appraise. All right. Because they look around and there are no comps to support the offers that they're getting. And there's a lot of buyers that are using the strategy that they'll make the highest offer and offer a number that they don't think is going to appraise, and then renegotiate an escrow using the appraisal as leverage to adjust that price lower. So their objective is to get the transaction in escrow and then find a reason to renegotiate once they're in escrow. The other thing that we're seeing are escalation clauses. So an escalation clause where a buyer is saying, I'll pay $5,000 or $10,000 more than the highest verified offer that you've received. All right. So if you get a $1 million offer, I'll give you $1,010,000 up to $1,050,000, that kind of thing. So those are two things that we've seen coming back in the market as buyers get tired of coming in second and third and fourth place in these multiple offer situations. And, just as an aside, one of the strategies that we're teaching our buyers is if your budget is $600,000 and you're finding multiple offers, because that's a really hot segment of the market right now, because there's just not that much $600,000 inventory, if you could believe that, then what we're saying is go look at stuff that's $650,000, but it's been on the market 60, 90 days. And then go in there and make an offer based on what the comps say. And those people are going to be a lot more flexible because they're not getting any showings and they're not getting any offers. And you work the other end of the spectrum and that high price bucket where people are, remember, they're either selling right away or they're sitting on the market. So raise your price limit. If you're stop looking under 600 where you got all this competition, go look for 650 and then offer them 600 if that's what your budget is based on comps. And you're probably going to get a serious look from that seller, as you would more so than you would a seller who's been on the market 3 days with 5 offers.
Let's continue with the exodus on leaving the cities. Do you see this trend continuing for a while?
I think it's going to do it. See, there's some factors that we don't know, right? We don't know whether or not these employers are going to force people back into the workplace or not. That's the one thing that we don't know. So, if they continue, if these big companies which brought people to California and, in the first place, you had the gold rush of the 1800s, then you have the tech rush. I think they still called it the gold rush in, the 80s and 90s. And, the Apples and Googles and Microsofts of the world continue, and dozens of others like them have, really brought in talent, and they're finding they can find that talent in other parts of the world. You've seen places like Austin, Texas really spring up as a tech center now. And those big companies are now rushing to build, facilities there. Seattle is another one of those places where there's a lot of a big bench of tech talent that they can draw from. So I think a lot of it, I think certainly through the summer of this year and maybe a little longer, but I think eventually they're going to end up coming back into the city. And one of the reasons is but employees are going to have choices. So those employees that work with these big companies are going to be given a choice. You can live in you can live remotely and you can live in a less expensive part of the world, but we're going to pay you less too. So you're not going to take your California wage that we pay you so you can afford to have California housing and let you go live in Las Vegas, Nevada, where the housing is 1/3 of the cost of what it costs to live here, and still pay 100%. You got to take a 25% or 30% cut in your pay to be able, to do that, which relative to cost of housing may still end up netting, that employee more money. So there's going to be a lot of decisions like that, but I think that there's some great advantages to remote work, and I think there's some massive disadvantages. As an employee, I love remote working. I love working from my house, but as an employer, not as much. I like doing my job from my home. I got less interruptions. I can focus. I don't find it hard for me at all to stay focused while I'm at work. Some people have distractions, during the day. That's, not me. I have more distractions at work than I have working from home. So I get more work done, at home, but it's hard to build a culture. It's hard to build camaraderie. It's hard to build teamwork. It's harder to train and support and encourage your employees when you do it remotely. And I think for the most part, employers are going to come down on that side, and they're going to want people to come back into the office when they feel like it's medically and politically safe to do that.
Which brings up the last question that the article points out. We don't talk about it very often here, and I'm very aware of this in California. Higher tax rates, right? So Joe Rogan, many comedians, and most of you going, what's the big deal about losing comedians in Southern California? Well, it's a trickle-down theory, right? They left because the taxation and prices were so ridiculous in centralized Los Angeles that it wasn't cost effective without the comedy scene. So they moved throughout the country. Well, that has a trickle down. Nobody now is able to perform at the Comedy Store, which will lower more people and jobs in that area, which is a tourism boom. Will it change? Probably over time. California has one of the most ridiculous tax rates on the face of the planet, David. Have you seen anybody cite taxation as one of the bigger issues?
Yeah. When you look at a, 13% state income tax on top of whatever you're paying federal taxes, and very little benefits, really that come your way for that on top. And that's just individually. That's before you get to the business, side of it and the regulatory issues that, go around that. And it makes it very difficult. I mean, you really got to be a high producer to really make ends meet. I mean, that's what makes me crazy. I hear about all this debate about $15 an hour, and it's been a long time since I could hire somebody for less than $15 an hour in California. I mean, a really long time to be able to get it done. And I'm thinking, well, that's not really fair. I mean, first of all, $15, I don't even know what the minimum wage is in California, but I don't have anybody working for under $15 an hour. And in fact, I don't even think I could get an interview with somebody, to come work for $15 an hour. And I think about, we're talking about making a $15 hour minimum wage around the country. And I'm saying, well, that's not fair to Californians. I mean, maybe if you live in Arkansas or Alabama or one of those flyover states, and, I heard something on NPR where is it possible that the federal minimum wage is $7.35? Like that? I don't know. And they're talking about, so I could see if you're an employer paying somebody $7 an hour, why $15 an hour might make you sweat. But I'm like, who cares? And then I start thinking about the unfairness of that, to California employees versus employees in other parts of the country. And, so there's, things really, if you look at the cost of housing alone, even the IRS pays their employees, and federal workers pay their employees based on a cost of living adjustment based on individual markets. So if you're an employee of the U.S. government, generally speaking, let's say the IRS, my mom was employed there for a long time, so I know a little something about this. If she was working in San Francisco, she would make more than she would make if she was living in Orlando, Florida, where she lives right now, because they have an adjustment based on cost of living in order to kind of balance it out based on how much it costs to live in a particular city. And it would seem to me that as complicated as it sounds like that might be, that the minimum wage, a national minimum wage like $15 an hour, should be weighted based on a cost of living index, relative to, to other cities. I don't know. It's obviously not going to happen. $15 an hour is coming, but by the time it comes, it won't be enough, and they'll be lobbying for $20 an hour right after that. So I don't know.
Hey, everybody, check out EverHome and the EverHome way. Check out the benefits risk-free of being able to list your home just like a real estate professional. Go to everhome.io. Please subscribe, click the like button. Make sure you're getting us on all different forms. Follow us at David Bartels and at Lee Honish Marketing. We want to hear what you have to say on all the topics we just